Okay. I was just telling everyone I wore my best Dodger blue to represent tonight's game. They can maybe close the series. Um okay. Well, thank you for joining us today. My name is Aisha Dixon. I'm the director of the Maritime Retiree Relations Center. And today we have such a great topical conversation today that's really hit a lot of us at home, especially those in Los Angeles and the other UCs that are probably joining us today. So let me introduce you to Banu Joy Harrison. She's a UCLA trained mindfulness facilitator and certified as a mindfulness mentor and a professional mindfulness teacher. Banu's passion is designing and teaching workshops on mindful living, nervous system regulation, embodiment practices, and challenging emotions with trauma, aging, and chronic pain. Her focus on body-centered and mindfulness approaches to trauma and self-regulation offers individuals tools to come back to balance. So this is going to be an overview of the
Polyvagal.
polyvagal theory and how trauma can dysregulate our nervous system. So, in this session, we will examine how your response to the wildfires have impacted your body, your emotions, and your thoughts. So, without further ado, please join us and welcome Miss Banu, and you will have some moments of practicing mindfulness skills and also how to regulate your nervous system and the emotions of anxiety, grief, and sadness, and a lot of self-guilt, with greater sense of compassion and care. We are recording this, so if you have to step out, feel free. Um, we can definitely stop periodically to take some Q&A, but feel free to type them in the chat.
Yeah.
Other than that, any questions before we get started? Okay, I will turn it over to you, Banu.
Okay, great. Thanks. It's great to be here. And I know that there will be a wider audience down the road as this, gets on the sites. And I appreciate having your cameras on because I always teach better to faces. So if you want to, if it feels comfortable to keep your camera on, it gives me a greater sense of connection, which is what we all need when times are challenging, right? We need this ability to be with each other. So I just wanted to get a sense of, for those of you that are here live today, do you all live in the LA area, or are you from other areas? Just so I can get a sense of who is here. So if you want to put that in the chat, if you're in LA.
So I know Mary Peterson is a UCLA retiree. Geraldine, are you in LA?
There. Sorry, funny things happen there to the screen. That often happens, but uh, yes, I live in Santa Monica,
Okay, so you're right there. Yes. Yeah.
right here in the beautiful blue sky, sunshine, ocean breeze.
Nice. Nice. Wonderful.
Hard to ask for anything more.
Indeed. Indeed. That's great. Good.
So
And
Lo joined us from San Diego. We did share
Diego.
this program with our sister campuses. So I'm
Great.
assuming UC San Diego. I know some Berkeley folks should join in a little later. Anyone else from any of the other UCs? Okay.
Yeah. So while the wider audience may not have been directly impacted by fire, we live in a world where those of you, for example, in Berkeley area, um, you're you have earthquakes, right? And there's so much going on right now that our world is very challenging, and it makes it challenging for our nervous systems. So I'm going to share my screen because I have our little agenda for today of what we will be covering. Um, and just to give you a sense. So we're going to be doing these things today. I'm going to be weaving it in. If you have any questions, you can always drop them in the chat. I'll also have some space for you to open up the platform for questions. But being is a small live group, I don't want to put you on the spot. So, but we'll work through it in a way. So, I'll just give a little bit more background. I'm a clinical social worker for, boy, close to 31 years now, and my specialty has been in trauma resolution using mindfulness and body-oriented strategies. Because when we have trauma or when there's overwhelm, it just doesn't affect our emotions, right? It doesn't just affect our mind. Our bodies, we live in our bodies and we experience our life through our bodies on this in this world. And that's the great stuff, the wonderful stuff, but also the more challenging. So we're going to be talking about overwhelm and unpredictability and trauma in your nervous system. And, due to the short length of this class, won't be a deep dive into polyvagal theory, because I could talk for hours and hours about that. And then we'll be doing some mindful skills that are simple, that you can practice at any point. They're kind of informal skills that you can do throughout your day that can help your nervous system come back to some balance. And I have found these to be very, very helpful. I also teach on the mindfulness app called Insight Timer. And at the end of this, I'll put a link in where you can find I have lots of recordings that you can find that are helpful. And I also do live sessions, and it is a resource for you if what I'm talking about resonates with you. All right, so let's arrive. So for those of you that are new to mindfulness, we often are very external in our world, and mindfulness practices help us kind of settle and kind of anchor with ourself. And so what I'm inviting you to do is to just notice your posture. You don't have to change, you don't have to do anything, but feel the support of the surface beneath you. If you have a back to your chair, just feel like your body can settle into the support beneath you. Kind of let gravity hold you, so you're not using all your muscles to be sitting upright. And then I'd like you to look around your space. I know many of you are in your homes, as I am, a very familiar space. But look around and see if right now something pops out in your visual field that, oh yes, this painting is so beautiful, or I'm looking at my zinnias that I cut from my garden and the colors are so beautiful. I will tell you about the nervous system benefit to this orienting practice. But you're just looking and sensing your space. This is where I am right now. And then you can bring in sound. So noticing my voice. There may be some traffic noise or wind in the trees. Maybe your refrigerator goes on and off. Maybe noticing your hands on your lap. And then I'd like you to become aware of any neutral to pleasant body sensation that you're having right now. So often we notice immediately an uncomfortable sensation. right? Pain, ache, discomfort, soreness. And so I'd like you to just be curious of what feels good enough today. What's comfortable? Maybe your elbows are just fine, or your earlobes, or your feet. Maybe your belly is doing well, you're digesting food smoothly today. And I'd like you to be curious that as you pay attention to this neutral to pleasant sensation, what happens in your body? You might notice your breath changing, maybe slowing down. You might notice your shoulders softening a little bit. Or you might feel a little bit slower inside your body or your mind. Or you might feel just the same as when you came online. Nothing needs to happen. There's nothing to fix. We're just honing our awareness of our external environment and our internal environment. So thank you for arriving and settling and joining me today. And some of the neurobiology piece of orienting has a lot to do with how we move through trauma. And orienting is a skill. I'm a trained somatic experiencing practitioner, Dr. Peter Levine's method of working with trauma. And our bodies are always in present time. And when we orient, we're actually paying attention to where our body is in this moment, which is kind of a rare thing because usually we're thinking about the future or the past, or we're worried or we're on our phones, and we're actually not right here in this present moment. And the present moment is where the body lives. And so one of the ways that we can begin to help our bodies come into balance is by joining with our body right here, right now, in this moment, which is a very, very powerful practice. And when we look around, we are engaging and stimulating our vagus nerve, which many of you may or may not have heard of. It's one of the longest nerves in the body. It goes from the brainstem, comes down both sides of the neck, and it goes through all the organs of the torso, heart and lungs and digestion, and has a lot to do with how we respond to stress, how we relax. The vagus nerve is responsible for our rest and digest parasympathetic functioning, as opposed to our fight, flight, or freeze responses that we have when we detect some danger or threat. And so by turning our head and neck and looking and listening and sensing where we are nudging our rest and digest system into action so that we can come into more balance. So that is the helpful qualities of this orienting practice. So for me, one of my cues that helped me settle was this beautiful milkweed. The picture is so exquisite on the screen, and the softness of the seed pods, it just softens my body, right? And so nature can be a very powerful amplifier of this beautiful parasympathetic relaxation response that we can activate with this orienting skill. All right, so what happens when we have overwhelm or unpredictability? So the fires were a huge overarching, trauma that affecting thousands and thousands and thousands of people, right? So there's this field of overwhelm and a field of unpredictability that was incredibly overwhelming. And unpredictability is not what our nervous system likes. Our brain and nervous system is basically a prediction machine. We like to know what's going to happen because that's what gives us a sense of safety and stability. And when you have when you have an environmental event, whether it's fire or flooding or earthquakes or overwhelming social events that are happening all over our country right now, this creates a state of unpredictability. And it disrupts our sense of safety, which makes our nervous system predict that we're not safe. And in a natural disaster, you're not safe. That's the truth, right? For those of you living in, right there where it's happening, this is a huge challenge, and you have to be really focused so that you can keep yourself and your house safe. And even if you were not living in an area that was affected directly by the fires, you were still getting the news. If you were in outskirts areas, you might have, seen or breathed the smoke. And we get focused, as we should, right? It's a narrow focusing of attention on this event and what we can do to keep ourselves safe. And what this does in our system is it triggers our protective responses, as it should, right? So that we can go into our fight-flight responses of our sympathetic nervous system, right? We need to be ready to mobilize, to move, to evacuate, to get masks, to, get the things that we need to in our car so that we can have all our documents, whatever that is. We need that energy to mobilize. We need that sympathetic fight flight. It's kind of like the gas pedal in our car. We need to, vroom, do it and get going to protect ourselves. And this is an appropriate life-saving capacity that is built into our system. Some people, perhaps, if you are out of the direct impact of the natural disaster, it might have invoked more of a freeze response, which is, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't know what to do right now. I'm immobilized. I feel frozen. And this can happen when you are out of the area of danger, and maybe you know people in the danger area, but there's really nothing you can do. And so there's a sense of feeling helpless, that there's nothing that you can do to mobilize to help. But so you have a lot of energy kind of spinning around inside of you, but you're kind of frozen. That's the freeze response. And the fawn response is more of a relational protective response that has to deal with not resisting, the danger, and okay, just agreeing to keep yourself safe. And this is probably not so much activated when there's a natural disaster. Usually there's a coming together of people to help each other. And so usually you see more fight, flight, and freeze responses when there's natural disasters. So overwhelm, this sense of can be too much too fast, or things intensely happening for too long. And so this was the condition of the Los Angeles fires, right? Because started in one area and then it kept going and it kept spreading and popping up. And so it was going on for days and days and days. And it was way too much for way too long. And where people were hyper vigilant, watching for alerts, wondering if they have to evacuate or not. And it's kind of like being vigilant for way too long. It's exhausting. Overwhelm can also be too little for too long, right? Where there's not enough help, where you don't have access to the resources, you don't get the care you need, you don't have the understanding, and it goes on and on. And that can be often happening in the aftermath of a natural disaster where there's not enough aid, there might be not enough food, and there's just too much deprivation, not enough resources, um, not being able to get a hold of insurance companies and things like that. And it causes dysregulation in our mind, in our emotions, and also in our bodies. And I was talking, I don't know if it was Aisha when we were talking ahead of time for this, but um, the reactivity that can happen when there's a new alert months after the fires are over, and it triggering a really big, overwhelming response. This happens, right? Because again, your brain and nervous system are a predictability system. And so when you get another alert, whether it's an alert for a wildfire or for wind or for flooding or for ice, agents, whatever it is, those alerts can pop your nervous system quickly and rapidly into a protective state of high vigilance, that because your nervous system said, well, back in January when the fires were happening, I had to be on guard for all the time. And so, boom, you go up into this really big, big response. Yes, Aisha.
So on the topic of being, I think we're all in a space now of being hyper vigilant, and especially with, you mentioned ice, because that's affected so many of our neighbors, colleagues, friends, coworkers, employees. Um, it's a different kind of feeling helpless that I feel a lot of people have also had during the fires of there's nothing I can do. Um, how do we sit with those feelings? Um, and the second part of that question is kind of, and maybe you'll touch on this, but the self-guilt. We all have coworkers and colleagues that live in Santa Monica or the Palisades or Altadena, and all we could do was watch it on TV with them and donate and donate and donate. But it's just, having that self-guilt along with, I guess self-guilt also comes through with feeling for people who are affected by ice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for the shutdown,
Yeah,
right?
the government shutdown too. Sure.
Yes. And so we have multiple things happening in our world right now that can are feeling unpredictable and overwhelming. And so I will get to how do we sit with these big feelings, whether it's guilt or helplessness or fear or overwhelm or worry or anxiety or depression and sadness. These are all things that can arise. And, I'll just say one thing now, which is the first and most important thing we can do is to name it, to notice it, right? We can just say, wow, this is overwhelming right now, and I am feeling helpless, right? And there is, again, a neurological benefit to this simple noticing and naming practice, which is when I notice something that I'm feeling, and if I can name it, it balances my left and right hemispheres, which can soften the intense emotional piece a bit. It won't take it away, but it can soften it a little bit. So yes, Angela.
I had to find my unmute thing.
Yes.
Thank you so much for this workshop. I'm so happy that you mentioned noticing the feeling and naming it, because for so many years, decades, I would experience overwhelm and I would literally kind of like shut down, but I never had a word for it up until maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. I never had a word for it, so I always felt trapped and stuck in whatever that mysterious feeling was. So noticing and naming was a way to give me agency and to hear myself, to feel myself. So thank you for sharing that part because it does soften the blow of whatever that emotion is.
Yes. And what you're experiencing is a totally normal response to abnormal circumstances. The response of overwhelm or feeling helpless or wishing that you could do something more, that's a really normal, empathic, compassionate response to suffering in the world. And we're going through very abnormal times. And so there's nothing wrong with what you're feeling. Right. So thank you for sharing that. So yeah, notice and name is a very, very powerful practice. And this is Stephen Porges' quote. He's the developer of polyvagal theory, which has become very deeply woven into trauma work. And it is when we feel unsafe, all of our metabolic, hormonal, all of our body functions, all these resources are diverted to protect and defend ourselves, right? Our fight, flight, and freeze responses. And we don't have much of anything left to be able to heal and grow and learn. And so, for those of you in the LA area or other areas where there's been natural disasters or social challenges, it's just this ongoing, pervasive lack of safety, right? Which amplifies the protective responses, and it makes it very difficult to sleep well, right? To relax well, to, be able to learn, to be able to have friends, to be able to be social and enjoy this beautiful planet and each other. So part of what I try to offer to people is to microdose little bits of safety wherever we can grab them, because our nervous system really needs this. So safety is so essential to, digestion gets thrown off, immune function gets thrown off. Our thinking, it's when we're in our protective responses of fight, flight, freeze, it's hard to be creative. It's hard to think clearly. We're more emotionally reactive. It can be hard to tap into our grief because it feels like it's way too much. And it's also difficult to be in wonder and to notice the good, which is why at the beginning of this class, I asked you, see if you can notice a neutral or pleasant sensation in your body. right? Because that is a way that we can microdose just a little bit of safety in our body, like, oh, my tummy is happy. I just had a really good meal. Or I'm in this class and this is, I'm getting ideas and this is good information. My mind is happy, right? When I get information, learning is such a beautiful thing. And um, so we need to feel safe enough as often as we can. Um, that's really essential medicine in these times when there's so much lack of safety prevalent. So I'm going to do just a little bit of a diagram here so that you can understand your nervous system. And um, so this, I'm not going to go into real deep, but I think this diagram will help you get a sense of kind of where your body is, because in all the work with people with trauma over the last almost 25 years, I have found that understanding what's happening in your own nervous system is profoundly helpful in understanding ourselves. So we have this sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic. It's kind of like a reciprocal system. So watch the screen because just see the diagram first, because the visual cue can be helpful, and then I'll add words to it and we can look at it again if you want to. So this is a really healthy nervous system, right? There's some activation and there's some settling, and then some activation where we get a little more charged up. Like I have my beautiful tea here, right? That has some caffeine in it. If you have a little caffeine in the morning, you're bumping up your sympathetic energy just a little bit, right? So that you can have a little charge and then it wears off and discharge. And then maybe we exercise or we walk a little bit and we have another charge again. We work in our garden, right? We get a little more mobilization happening. This flow of our nervous system is essential to regulation. And so again, there's a sympathetic charge, a parasympathetic relaxation, a sympathetic charge. We're doing this naturally all day long, right? Like after you have a beautiful meal, you want to rest a little bit, right? Like, oh, I'm going to lean back. Maybe I'll read a book. Maybe I'll sit outdoors if the weather is good. There's this natural, my body needs the parasympathetic system to digest. So I don't want to exercise right after eating, right? There's wisdom to wait 30 minutes before you go in the swimming pool, right? Because otherwise all the blood is diverted to muscles and not to our belly where we need it for digestion. Okay, so there's this beautiful natural rhythm that happens. So then here's that beautiful range where we have our resilience. And then we have an overwhelming experience and everything goes wonky. And we kind of are out of our window of resilience between those dotted lines. And things are just all over the place. And we can end up getting stuck on high, which is our sympathetic fight flight, where we live above the dotted line a lot. And these can be some of the emotions that arise when it's kind of like the gas pedal is stuck on, and the car, your body car, is just all the time, right? There can be rage and hyperactivity and hypervigilance and anxiety and panic that can be, it's really charged up. And then our bodies, we can have irregular heart rhythms, we can have irregular breathing, either too fast or too shallow, indigestion, we brace our muscles, we can startle easily, our heart rhythms, hypertension, our temperature's dysregulated, our sleep gets thrown off. Maybe we wake up a lot at night. This is what happens when we're stuck on high. The gas pedal of our nervous system is stuck on, and it's exhausting, utterly exhausting. Conversely, for some people, their system may default to being stuck on low, below, where you kind of live predominantly below the dotted line. And this is the freeze response. It's this dorsal vagal primitive part of our parasympathetic nervous system. It's kind of like the brakes, right? It's like what helps us relax, but it's like, oh, the brake is stuck on, right? And we're like, the brake is on so much that we can't move, right? And what can happen when we're stuck on low is the emotions that can arise are depression, a feeling of disconnection, feeling helpless, hopeless, exhausted, feeling numb to everything. It's just too much coming at us, and we just have to check out. And then our bodies can have muscle weakness, and we feel very, kind of collapsed. Our digestion doesn't work. And this is where a lot of IBS and constipation and stomach aches, and we either oversleep or undersleep, and our temperature's off, and we don't want to talk to anybody, and we just feel, limp. These are all protective responses, right? These are important ways that our nervous system instinctually tries to keep us safe, right? This freeze response is helpful when we don't want to be seen, when we want to be invisible, because then we won't get attacked, right? We won't get eaten by the tiger if you're hunkered under the bush, right? We also need our sympathetic pedal to the metal to run out of danger, right? We need that, but we don't want to be stuck on it. We don't want these systems to be all the way on or all the way off. So for some people, I mean, everyone has their own variation on, on a theme of this chart, right? Where some people are more predominantly stuck on high, some people stuck predominantly on low, and some people, they bounce back and forth, right? And actually, the bouncing back and forth is probably the most common because our bodies can't keep being stuck on high forever because it's exhausting. So then we kind of collapse down, we disconnect, we collapse down into our freeze, hoping we'll get some rest. But what happens is we pull all that energy from the sympathetic and we break it. So it's kind of like sitting in your car hoping to rest, but the gas pedal's to the floor and your brake is on. And it's just sort of revving. And so it really isn't that restful. But then if something alerts you from the environment, boom, you pop right back up into that hypervigilance again. And so it feels like you're just on this seesaw. And you've kind of lost this beautiful mid-range where you feel regulated, where you feel calm but alert and you're able to connect. That's in between the dotted lines is the most efficient, most beneficial state to be. And so what I've found with working with so many people over the decades is that when there's repeated overwhelm and trauma, those dotted lines start getting closer together. So our resilience gets less and less and less, and we're more apt to be in our protective responses of stuck on high or stuck on low. So a big part of working with our emotions, working with these nervous system states, and widening our resilience, our window of capacity, widening our ability to be with what's happening in the moment is with practices that widen our window, like noticing something in your body that feels good enough. So, any questions? This is a lot of information to throw at you. Anything that this is just a real quick overview of this polyvagal states. Does it make sense? Yeah. Where, a question that I would always ask my clients is, where do you live most of the time? Do you live between the dotted lines in your area of steadiness? Do you live stuck on high or stuck on low? Aisha.
So when you talk about this window of capacity to deal with these things, um, are we trying to be more aware that the window's open and try to close it, or is that going to affect kind of closing off our emotions?
No, so this middle zone here is actually what's called ventral vagal. It's a part of our nervous system, our parasympathetic rest and digest system that has been the last to develop. It's only found in mammals. And so to have a wide window of capacity or wide window of tolerance means we have enough resourcing in ourselves to be able to cope with whatever's happening to us in a way where we can be present, where we can be connected, where we can feel what we're feeling, but it doesn't throw us into a dysregulated state where I'm out of control, anxious, or I'm stuck at home and can't leave the house because of my depression. It gives me, it's like, whoa, yes, I am, I need to mobilize. This is a lot right now. I want to help people. What can I do? Let me, work at a center of donation where people have donated things and let me offer, right? That's approaching the challenge in a way that where you have some capacity to be present, to be kind, to be alert, to be creative, to brainstorm, and to, offer your presence, with other people. So did that answer your question? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was a great question. So I'm going to move on. If there's other things that arise, please, we can just put a note in the chat or raise your hand. So to return to this window of resilience or window of capacity or window of tolerance, however you want to label it, we need these things. We need daily cues of safety, right? And we need good rest, which there's so many millions of people are not getting good rest these days. We need to get snippets of awe and wonder. We need positive social connection, and we need to write down a list of our personal resources of things that help us come back to some steadiness. And I'll talk about these more. So daily cues of safety can be feeling the sun on our face when we step outside, right? Or here, I'm from New Mexico. We just had some beautiful rains. I live in a very, very dry climate. And so we had some rains, and the fragrance of the moisture after the rain, that was just so powerful for me, right? That was my cue of safety. It's like, the earth got some, nourishment through rain. A daily cue of safety can be a hug from a partner or family member. It can be a phone call with a friend, right? Like someone knows I'm here. It can be the warmth of your shower, right? So these are simple things that we interact with regularly that we usually don't pay attention to. And then good rest. I could do a whole thing on sleep, right? Sleep is challenging, especially when our bodies are in protective states of fight, flight, or freeze. You know, we don't sleep as well because we need a sense of safety to be able to relax and rest, right? So doing things like not listening to the news right before you go to sleep, that can be helpful. However, when you're in the midst of a disaster, like the fires, you know, going to sleep was hard because you couldn't pay attention as much, right? And it could be dangerous. So sleep gets dysregulated. So giving yourself time to wind down, to have a good yawn, to do some restful things before you go to sleep is really helpful. The sense of awe and wonder kind of folds into the daily cues of safety. But I think it was Geraldine, you know, how you shared about the sky and the ocean and all those beautiful things. That's the sense of awe and wonder, which is so beautiful. And then positive social connection. We need our people. We need to have people that we can feel safe with, that we can lean on, that we can offer our support to. And this includes animals, if you have them. Animals are a very powerful social connecting force. And in times like what we're living in, we need to rally around each other. It's a very good ventral vagal experience that widens our window of capacity. And so, in whatever way you can do this, connecting with family, if they're a good source of connection for you, friends, groups, whatever it's very, very powerful. It's very good for our bodies and our emotions and our minds. And then this list of personal resources. So this comes from somatic experiencing trauma work. And to write, you know, this will be your homework from this class, is to write down the things that you do or have available to you that bring you back to a sense of calm, of steadiness, of goodness, of kindness. And so it can be activities like going to church, if that, you know, to support your faith. It can be praying, can be meditating, it can be, you know, playing cards with your friends. It can be, you know, I like to knit, right? I'm a knitter. So every night I am sitting with my yarn, creating something of beauty. And it's slow and it's rhythmical and it helps me settle, right? There's beauty, there's touch involved with it. And so you might have a pet that you live with, that petting this pet is a resource. Some of you may love cooking or dancing or listening to music or reading or learning or anything like that that can bring you into an activity that is resourcing for you. And the reason that I'm asking you to write it down is that when we get triggered into our protective states, right, going up into our fight, flight, or if we collapse down into our freeze, the executive part of our brain doesn't work so well. And so we can't remember what to do when we're dysregulated. But if we have a list, it can be like, oh, I can drink water. That's important for my regulation. Oh, let's see what else is on my list. Go for a walk. Yes, I can do that today. Or call a friend. Yes, I can do that when I'm not feeling so well. And so knowing that we drop out of our executive functioning more into our survival mode of our lower brain structures, this helps, right? Like when I'm really upset or dysregulated, I may not be able to remember what to do for myself to help myself. So have it on your phone, like, good cues, like notice that you're breathing. I'm still here, right? Right now, during the fires, all of us mindfulness teachers realized during COVID and during the fires, we realized that paying attention to the breath was not necessarily a good activity, right? It could be because it was triggering for people. And so we had to find other anchors of attention where we could have our mindfulness students focus on. All right, so I think, yes, let's do a practice. And what I will do is I'm going to guide you in how we can get the most benefit from these resources that we identify. Because it's one thing to say, oh, the ocean is one of my resources, and I love looking at the ocean. That's great, because that's the first step. But then we have to take it into the body, and it's like, when I gaze out on this vast expanse of the ocean, what begins to happen inside my body? That's where you get the very deep lower brain structure shift into more balance and regulation. So let me guide you through a practice. So you can put down your pens and paper. Maybe take a few deep breaths if you want. And take a moment to kind of bring to mind one of your resources. What is something or someone that you have in your life, that you can do in your life, that brings you a sense of calm? Maybe it's taking a bath in the evening. It can be simple things. And what I'd like you to do next is to imagine doing this thing right now. Imagine getting a hug from a grandchild, or sipping your beautiful hot drink, or noticing the flowers, whatever your resource is. Get a really strong sensory experience of that right now. What does it feel like? Are there any fragrances? Are there any sounds as I do this activity? Is there any touch, a part of it, as you imagine doing this wonderful thing? And then we're going to stretch out the good. We're going to savor the sensations of doing this. Right? If you can savor the goodness of an experience for 12 to 15 seconds, it begins to wire more strongly in your nervous system. And so stretching out the goodness of this chosen resource that you're imagining. And then asking yourself the question, what begins to happen in my body as I imagine doing this activity or being with this person? And these changes in your body may be subtle. Maybe your breathing changes, maybe you slow down, or maybe you take a deeper breath. Maybe you have a smile come to your face. Maybe you feel like you're slowing down a little bit. Or maybe you're feeling a little bit more enlivened by imagining this, so you feel a little more up. Stretching out the goodness of these sensations. This is a very simple but powerful mindfulness tool to help ourselves come back into some regulation and balance. Help us come back into our window of capacity. And so take another couple of breaths and thank yourself for being willing to do this activity, this little practice. And I am just going to move through the slides, and then we'll have some time to chat where I can see you more fully on the screen, because I want to find out how this experience went for you. Another tool that we can use is offering ourselves kindness. And this can help if there's a sense of this guilt where it's like, oh, I wish I could do more. Oh, I'm not so affected, and I feel guilty for still having a job or for having a house. And, we have to offer ourselves kindness, whatever we're feeling, whether it's overwhelm, whether it's sadness, whether it's guilt, whatever it is. It's like, yeah, this is a normal response to this overwhelming experience. And, talking, I love sweet self-talk to myself, of like, this is really hard right now, isn't it? Of course I feel guilty. Of course I do. So many people are suffering, and I'm not suffering like that. This is so hard to feel this guilt. I feel it in the pit of my stomach, right? You want to notice it, you want to name it, and then you want to offer kindness. Of course, this is hard, right? And letting yourself be with that feeling a bit, right? A bit. So I'm going to stop the share here because I want to see your faces more and check in a little bit. For those of you that did the resourcing practice where you imagined one of your things that helps you come back to calm, how was that for you? Any questions about the practice? Any challenges with it?
I think Angela has one where I can go.
Okay, Angela first and then Aisha.
Oh, I didn't know I had one, but
Oh, okay.
It's okay. I have a question.
okay, go
So
ahead.
I know in our conversations before, Banu, you mentioned that you are the voice of an app called Insight Timer.
Yes.
So do you suggest we could use this to kind of figure out some sort of way to sleep better, reduce anxiety or stress?
Yes. So let me put in the chat my link.
I was
There
about to
are
do that.
There
Okay.
are over 10,000 teachers on Insight Timer. So it helps if you can look for me, so you
Okay.
don't have to weed through. But this is my page.
And I will follow up with everyone because I sent the slides over on Tuesday. So I will definitely send over
Yeah.
Banu's specific link for Insight Timer.
Yes, because I have this very practice that we did today. I have one called Embodying Your Resources. And I also have a practice called Microdosing Safety. And I have a practice of Notice and Name so that you can get support for these really powerful regulating skills. I also have ones on working with depression and working with anxiety and taking a pause practice and growing our window of tolerance, right? Our window of capacity. So my offerings on Insight Timer will directly support what you're learning today because it's always easier to have someone guide us through a practice than like, what am I supposed to do, and how do I do this notice and name? And um, so any other questions or comments about this resourcing practice that we did? Did anyone notice a shift in your body? Yeah, so Angela's nodding. Mary, is that a no? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, you did, or you
Yes,
didn't?
it's a no.
Yeah. So thank you for being honest about this. And this takes practice, right? And this is part of understanding our nervous system where we can be kind with ourselves because you might say, well, I did this practice with this teacher and nothing happened, so I'm no good at it. No, it's just that most of us have been practicing being anxious or worried or dysregulated for so many decades of our life that we have really deep neurological grooves of habit. I'm asking you to do something so different. And it takes time to begin to notice, to be curious, to even how do I pay attention to body sensations? Like, I don't know. I've never learned how to do that. No one ever taught me how to do that. And so we have to practice these tools so that we begin to grow, literally grow physical neurons in our brain and nervous system that are stronger pathways towards presence, towards regulation, towards calm. So, so thank you for being honest, because this does not come easily to most people. And so, what a beautiful teachable moment you offered us. So, I would encourage you to not be discouraged, right? And to say, yeah, this was really different, but oh, I'm noticing the beautiful bird on the bird feeder. Like, oh, there's my moment of a little bit of wonder. How does that feel like to notice something good, right?
I noticed things good,
Great.
but
So,
I'm still dealing with the trauma. I
of
lost everything.
course, yes.
And so my life has just been turned upside down.
Yes, of course. And Mary, you're still here.
Oh yes.
So that is a testament to your capacity to adapt to overwhelming events.
Mhm.
And so being really kind to yourself and knowing that this is going to take time, right, to heal from this on just a very basic, simple level of I lost everything, let alone the emotional pieces.
Yeah.
So what I invite you to do is that you said you were so good at noticing things. So when you notice something that's neutral or beautiful, to then say, ah, and how does this make me feel inside of myself? Does it bring a little joy? Does it bring a little sigh? Does it bring a little relief? Does it bring a little, you know, sense of upliftment in you? Because that is nourishment for your nervous system and for your heart and your mind. As you go through, maybe it's the kindness of somebody or all of that. So So the other piece that I wanted to share about the beauty of understanding your nervous system is what happens like when you're still dealing with the after effects of this disaster. Do you tend to go more into anxiety and worry and fretting about something, which would be natural and normal? Or do you kind of disconnect and collapse? Because then you can say, oh, I'm worrying again about what's going to happen. I'm in my fight flight, my sympathetic nervous system. I'm kind of stuck on high. What would be helpful for me? Right? So you're noticing and naming. My mind is racing because I'm worrying and my chest feels tight. So, what resource could help me slow down or settle just a little bit? Right? It's not going to make the worry or the thing get automatically wondrously healed, but you're noticing where you are in your nervous system. You're noticing and naming it. You're saying, yeah, I'm anxious right now. Okay. You're being kind to yourself. And then you're applying a resource like, I can't sit still. I'm worrying so much. Maybe I'll take a little walk, right? Or maybe I'll do some stretching in my living room or in my apartment or my little space in somebody else's house that I'm living in, right? What can I do that would help me feel a tiny bit better? And just the noticing and naming, like, I'm in my sympathetic worry state. Yes, I'm noticing and naming that, and I'm being kind to myself. Already, you're beginning to shift your system. So, thanks for those of you that I have to leave. Thanks for being here. And the same thing if you're feeling kind of overwhelmed with grief or sadness, or you feel numb and disconnected. To notice that is very, very powerful, right? It's like, yeah, I've dropped in this disconnect, or I'm just watching TV nonstop. I'm not feeling much of anything. Oh, yeah, I'm in my freeze state. Okay, that's a natural protection. It's kind of like the circuit breaker on your electrical box. When the charge is too much for too long, instead of blowing all the circuits on your house, you shut down. That's what happens in our nervous system too. But then we can get stuck there. And so the gift of curiosity and how we pay attention is noticing, like, yeah, I kind of feel lethargic. I'm kind of feeling collapsed today. I kind of feel blah. Oh, I'm in my freeze. I'm kind of stuck in my freeze. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I've been really overwhelmed lately. Okay, this won't last forever. And is there anything that I can do, or maybe a person I can talk with that can help me feel a little more connected again instead of numb and separate? Right. So this is how using this nervous system information can be really helpful with our different emotions, with our different states. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So, any other final comments or questions, Banu or everyone else?
Or, I'm very open, like, what are you struggling with the most right now? What's the most challenging? We can talk about that and kind of figure out some strategies since we're a smaller group here. If you want to, this is being recorded, so you may not want to share, but or what your friends, but usually it's kind of being stuck on high, anxious, worried, or being disconnected. And so modulate how much news intake is healthy for you. Get outside if you can, if you're in a safe enough environment. connect with friends. All these things are really, really good medicine for these times to help with overwhelm and trauma. So, oh, my heart goes out to all of those that have lost so much. It's
Yeah,
not what you expected in this time of your life, you know?
No.
right. And we have quite a few who are rebuilding, so I know the anxiety is there and the grief of still being able to have, those thoughts of how to process and move forward. But I thank you, Banu. We are we have some more time if we have Q&A. Otherwise, I'll save this recording and I'll send you a copy of it.
All right.
Any final words? All right. Well, Banu, thank you so much for giving us some insight and to, figure out, is our window too big? Is it too small?
But your window I don't think can ever be too big.
Okay.
It's just, have I gotten out of my window? Am I stuck in my, pedal to the metal, fight, flight, or am I collapsed into my freeze?
Right.
And so just having compassion and kindness and curiosity. Curiosity is what will help you the most. And to know that having a free and, fluid nervous system is the best. So
Mhm.
what brings you joy, even for a moment in the day, I've learned a lot from my mom. My mom is 103 and she is German, and she was a young woman all during World War II.
Wow.
And so she never talked about it, as most people going through war. And she's quite resilient. And, I remember her sharing one thing, talking about resources. And she said that she was on a train around Frankfurt, and there was an air raid. So the train stopped and everyone had to get off the train. And the passengers would have to disperse into the fields to find a safe little, trench or little depression where they could kind of hunker down in case there was a bomb. And she said, yeah, I found this little, depression in the ground. And she said there was this most beautiful flower growing there. And I just remember that flower. And I just thought, this is a woman who is resourcing herself in present time. In the middle of an air raid, she's finding something beautiful to see, right? And it just is such a powerful, practice that she did without knowing any of this nervous system stuff, of how can she get through this moment as intact as possible. And
Yeah.
she's also someone that goes with the flow. She's in an assisted living now. She's been for 4 years, and she said, I just go with the flow. And I said, I bet you learned that during the war when you never knew what you were going to see the next day. You never knew what was going to happen. She said, yeah. And so for those of you that are in this unpredictability, be kind to yourself, stay steady as you can, and look for moments of wonder and safety, and connect with people that you can trust. So I wish you all so well in your healing journey.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon, and I appreciate it. All right, take care, everyone.
Hey, take care. Mhm.
Bye.
Bye.